to the Cult of Domesticity podcast, a podcast about history, true crime, and whatever life brings us. I'm Courtney, and every week I am joined by another fascinating person. Let's see what we're going to talk about this week. Before we start, I'd like to thank all of our current patrons for helping to support the collective. Obscura, a true crime podcast, Cara Demizio, Brandon Scheck Snyder, John, Strictly Homicide podcast, Jules, a Murderific podcast, and Landshark. Thank you guys so much for your support and helping keep this going. And thank you to all the listeners. I know you support through listening, and some of us can't always support monetarily, but patrons know it's much appreciated. And there, I think, will be double podcast episodes this month as I catch up and maybe work on getting some additional surprises in there. Welcome back, collective. This week we're joined by the wonderful Vanessa from, I'm going to butcher it. It's so long.
It's
Not
long.
Another X-Files podcast. And on Skype it says podcast.
There are two podcasts in the title.
Yes.
Just to confuse you.
I mean, we'll just have a club of podcast names that confuse listeners.
Cool.
Because mine does.
Does it?
No one knows what it's about. The new logo helped a lot.
Because isn't Cult of Domesticity, that's like a phrase, right? Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like a challenge on this idea that you have to be like this domestic person. And
yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to be a 1950s housewife or an 1840s womanly ideal. It's like, yeah, I might stay in my house and bake cookies, but I'm also going to do it with like ID channel on. Or like listening to this in-depth discussion of British politics.
There you go.
You know, it doesn't mean you're just sitting there and like, I'm just going to have like classical music on, which there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, that royalty-free classical music.
But you don't have to do that.
You don't have to do that. And you can learn things and open your horizons.
Well, that was a really good way to open your podcast because now whoever's listening knows exactly what your podcast is about.
Yeah, and it'll stop the reviews that are like, your podcast and your like topics make no sense. And I'm like, thank you.
I think, thanks very much for that. I think that your podcast name actually opens up endless possibilities for things to talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm here for it. And I've listened to your podcast and it's fun. I really like... Well, we were talking before we started recording about how you sometimes cover kind of depressing things, but like you gotta have room for that in life. And it's also a lot of the topics you cover are really interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like the interestingly depressing, but your podcast covers a whole different thing. You cover the X-Files, which I've never seen. I feel like that's my nerdiness card needs to be taken away for that. But
you know what? Nerddom is so huge that I don't know how we expect to be able to see everything. I have this friend group of nerds who I love dearly, but it's this thing of like, so many of them have seen so many things. And I'm like, when do you do that? Like, I don't have the time.
Do you just read the summaries? Like,
yeah, right?
And like, yeah, I've totally watched this.
Yeah. I don't know.
So tell everyone what they can expect if they tune into an episode.
Okay.
Of your podcast.
So my co-host Carolyn and I have watched the X-Files when we were younger. We didn't know each other when we were younger, but I just realized it kind of sounded like that. But we watched it separately when we were younger and we're big fans. And long story short, we watch an episode and then we talk about it. And so we're on season 8 now. And we started from season 1. Yeah. It's been a long road. And there are, there's 9 seasons and then there's 2 movies. And then there are 2 seasons that came out in 2016 and 2017, though I could be wrong about that second date. And so we've done 1 movie, 7 seasons, and those 2 newer seasons that I mentioned. So we still have 1 more movie and 2 more seasons to do.
And then you'll have to figure out something else to talk about the X-Files for.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what we're going to do when we're done. We'll see.
That's always crazy. Whenever I see people doing like show podcasts, I'm like, what do you do when it's done?
I know. I don't know. I do other podcasting too, though. Like I have a podcast that I work on a team with about multi-potentiality, which is basically the idea that, well, I think a lot of people can say this about themselves, but multi-potentialites sort of don't have just one path in life, whether it's interests or careers or whatever. We have a lot of different interests, and it's this sort of navigating how to deal with all of them at once and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I work on a podcast about that as well. So,
light podcasting, in your life. Just it's a hobby.
Well, I actually have a business helping people make podcasts too.
Which is awesome. I'm so jealous. I always think about that. And it's this hard, history thing.
Like, having your own business is not easy.
So, I'm going to go first.
Yes.
Because I have the downer topic, aka true crime, this week.
And I have no idea what you're talking about, so this is going to be interesting.
Yes. So, have you ever heard of Alton Coleman or Debra Brown?
I mean, Debra Brown is a very boring name. So I feel like I've probably heard that name before, but I don't know who that is. And the other person, no idea.
No. Okay, so I'm pulling a lot of this from Alton Coleman and Debra Brown, Odyssey of Mayhem. It's by Mark Gribben of the True Crime Library. He just did such a good job that I'm like, okay, let's, see where this goes.
Odyssey of Mayhem. Okay.
Such a good name.
Yeah.
I'm always impressed. So it's basically, think of Myra Hindley and Ian Brady from the UK, but in the US. This is where this is going to go.
Yeah, I actually don't even know who that is either.
So this is, it's going to be a wild ride. Okay. We're going to be in the mid 1970s across 5 states.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to start with Alton Coleman because we have to get to how they get together.
Okay.
He was born in Waukegan, Illinois town, about half an hour north of Chicago. And he basically got teased a lot in school because he often peed his pants. Adam Sandler, only cool kids pee the pants.
Isn't this always how that starts? Like, he was bullied, and then you just know what happens after that.
Whenever people go, oh, it was bullying. Yeah, a lot of people are bullied.
No, it's true.
A lot of people don't murder people.
Yeah, you're right. But they often do. The stories do seem to start that way. Just saying.
Some part of the McDonald's triad.
Mm.
So he got the nickname Pissy because children. And
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, they think he was developmentally slow because anyone who dealt with him, like family members or police officers, since he was a teen, said he was like slow to show emotion and he keeps to himself, as he's clearly doesn't have a lot of friends. He's alienated. He's that loner kid. He does get a reputation for having a very strong sex drive.
Oh boy.
But somewhat progressively for the 70s, he's bisexual and he's like, yeah, I'll have sex with anyone, anytime, any place. Let's go.
Okay.
I'm like,
hey.
As a friend of Coleman's mother said, quote, he knew he was different even as a young child. As he grew up, Coleman was deeply into insidious kinds of sexual gratification, unquote. So, they knew something wasn't right, and they're just like, it's fine. It was just kind of better. They were just like, it's fine, that public facade.
Yeah. I don't think in the 70s they were doing as much,
therapy?
Yeah, and they weren't, like, seeing a lot of sexual things as okay, because, like, you can, like the person said, sexually deviant, like, you can, be into sexual things that might not be super mainstream and still be, like, an okay person, depending on what you're doing. So, yeah. It just seems like anything that was out of the norm, that wasn't, like, missionary style, was probably, like, not okay.
I think it's, at this point, we have, like, the LGBTQ movement starting up.
Yeah.
But it's mainly, I think, gay and lesbian, so they're like that middle ground isn't being explored as much.
Very true.
It is starting to be. Like, we see the second wave now where it is. We're like, why do you need to define gender? What is gender? It's all fluid, man.
Exactly.
So the police first get it into his radar. When he's a teenager, he was picked up for breaking windows in his Waukegan housing project. So, the cops are like, troublemaker, even though he's a petty criminal at this point. But petty crime doesn't mean he's, like, what's gonna happen is gonna happen.
Yeah,
a lot of people get they say, when you're younger, you're more likely to be incarcerated because it's like youthful mayhem and you don't know. Like, you have less of a stake in the game, and as you get older, you have more. So
yeah,
he was really a fan of property damage, you know, like arson.
Mm-hmm.
Like another check in that McDonald triad a little bit. So he pretty much was like, they could have locked him up so many times, like all the time. They're just like, you know, he's getting arrested for arson and all this other stuff, and they're not doing it. But because, you know, he's a pretty good talker, he's a smooth criminal, and he's like, oh, you know, Judge, don't worry, I won't do it again. It's fine. He's excellent in court. That's what I'm going to say. All right. He's excellent in court. So he got that jury on his side. He's like, you know, I just made a mistake. I'll never do it again. And they're like, oh, of course.
We believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or getting them to believe that the cops have the wrong man. So he keeps getting off.
Wow.
He also is a fan of voodoo to protect him from the law. And, you know, as Waukegan Police Lieutenant Mark Hansen told the Detroit Free Press in 1984, quote, he tells a convincing story in court. People are impressed with his testimony. He comes off as a decent person, end quote. So, I mean, you could see it in the 70s and 80s. Like, he's just smooth talking to him. He's like, you know, I'm just a black man being, like, attacked by the system, and I'm just trying to, like, live my life. And they're like, you know what? Yeah, you are.
I didn't realize he was black.
Yes, yeah, so both of them are black.
Okay. Which, like, normally shouldn't matter, but when you're talking about historical context and stuff, it kind of does. So,
yeah. Especially in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
in, like,
for sure.
Illinois and Detroit.
Yeah.
So he often beat the rap, like all of his cases, by witness intimidation.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm. Mainly because his victims were normally children or younger teenagers, and they didn't want to be involved with the family. The family doesn't want him to go to jail. They don't want their kids to be known for this.
Mm-hmm.
In 1983, his sister actually went to authorities and told them that her brother tried to rape her 8-year-old daughter. So he's a pedophile on top of it.
Ugh.
But only 3 weeks later, she had the charges dropped, saying it was like, it's a misunderstanding. Sorry, right. Child rape is not a misunderstanding.
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's the judge and the cops really believe that she was terrified of him. But if they drop the charges, you can't do anything.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, I love this quote from the article. Quote, Coleman's rap sheet before his Midwestern spree reads like a one-man sex crime wave, end quote. Makes you feel good.
Yeah, great. So wholesome.
Mm-hmm. 1973, he and an accomplice kidnapped, robbed, and raped an elderly woman, and she refused to testify, so they only got him 2 years on the robbery charge. 3 months later, he was arrested for another rape. So this is all in early 70s. He's acquitted, but serves time for a lesser charge. 4 years after that, he's acquitted of a rape. A year later, he's arrested for attempted rape, dismissed.
I see a pattern here.
Mm-hmm. In July 1983 was when he was charged with the rape of his niece. That's dismissed. 1984, he was indicted for a knife point rape and murder in Chicago of a girl whose mother was a friend of his. So it's like a lot of acquaintance rape, it seems like. As soon as he learned that he was wanted for that crime, he disappears. And he starts his multi-state crime spree with his current girlfriend, Debra Brown.
There she is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they started dating, and he's not a great guy, but they're going along with it. No one really knows why they went underground, but like they did. Police said Coleman had a, quote, intense hatred of blacks, end quote. Friends say that's not really true. Their victims were mostly black, and it is proven that it's normally crimes committed within the same race. Like that, like rape and all of murder and all of that. So, mainly because they could stay in black neighborhoods, there's easier access, and, you know, he's not going to look out of place there.
Yeah. And maybe there's a little bit of like weird internal racism as well, or like internalized racism somehow. I don't know.
I think it's more internalized self-hatred because he is bisexual. He did have different tendencies. He was known as a classic disorganized serial killer. You know, he didn't really stalk victims. He just was at ease of whoever's nearby. He would just grab whatever was nearby to kill or incapacitate his victims. No real ritual. So he's not like a Bundy. He's more like a Ramirez.
Yeah.
So it pretty much seems like because of all the rape charges, he lost any real motivation to not kill people because he really had nothing else. Like, he was gonna get caught. So he's like, well, if I'm gonna get caught for rape, I might as well make sure, you know, there's no one to say there was a rape.
I guess. I mean, that's maybe some sort of logic. Yeah.
So they're on the run, and at the time, Coleman's indicted on a murder charge in Wisconsin and has a federal warrant issued for his capture because he's starting to murder across state lines. So the FBI really isn't a fan of that. And at that point, they get to come in and get their involvement. They began their spree June 5th, 1984. So he'd already been doing his serial raping for a decade at this point.
Right.
They rented an apartment in Gary, Indiana. Yes, that Gary, Indiana, of Music Man fame. And because Coleman had been wanted by the police since May 1st, Debra had been interrogated about his disappearance. They pretty much like hid out in this apartment for 2 weeks until two young girls, Tamika Turks and her 9-year-old aunt, disappeared on their way to the candy store.
Her 9-year-old aunt?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I heard that right.
I know. I didn't look into it. Yeah. So they found the 9-year-old, so her aunt, beaten and raped later that day, but Tamika is still missing. A day later, they found her body was it was awful. In a wooded area in Gary. She had been raped and strangled and stomped. Yeah, it was not good. They determined that the older girl was forced to watch as the pair killed Tamika. So basically her aunt, who, you know, isn't much older than her, is watching her niece get murdered. Brown held down Tamika, covering her face and nose and mouth, while Coleman jumped on her chest and face until her ribs fractured and punctured vital organs.
Ugh, my God.
It's not a painless way to die.
No.
You're suffocating, and then, I mean, just imagine you're repeatedly falling, but only on your chest until your ribs break, which doesn't feel great. No. Not at all. There's no nice way to say this, guys.
Yeah.
There's no...
Yeah, no kidding.
So then, the older girl was forced to have sex with both Brown and Coleman before she was beaten about her head. So...
Jeez.
But she was still alive. Like, that's the crazy thing. She was still alive when they found her, like, later that day.
Yeah.
And to this day, she still suffers severe headaches and screaming fits, which... Not shocked.
No, not surprised at all.
Quote, she will get to screaming and crying like someone is hitting her on the back of the head, end quote, said her mother, Mary Hilliard. So, like, it breaks your heart because, like, her mom kind of got, like, you kind of get your child back, but it's not your child anymore.
No, it's a completely different person in a way.
And then, you know, her niece is gone too, and, like, she had to watch all that. Yeah, they pretty much... Tamika's mother moved to Minneapolis because she just couldn't stay in Gary. Because, you know, their whole family then was broken because the mom can't stay because her daughter, like, memories of her daughter. Then her, like, Hilliard says, like, well, her friends, like, her relative's gone. Her daughter's not really there anymore. Her niece is gone too. And so, yeah, it's just messed up.
It's pretty messed up.
On top of it, the same day Tamika's body was discovered, Donna Williams, who was 25, was reported missing by her parents. Her car was stolen as well. So they're not like, it's a frenzied kind of disorganized chaos. So they did manage to find her car abandoned in Detroit a week later with a forged ID card that they, I think, glued Brown's picture on because it's the 80s.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I don't know
how professionally done was that.
You know, it's not like now where, like, you have the multiple layers. And it's like,
yeah.
So the residents of the area said that the car had been parked in the alley since June 9th. So, I mean, not very, it's like almost the same day. And now the pair has 4 states police officers looking for them.
Great.
They're assuming that Donna Williams has been murdered, even though her body has never been found. Like, it's not been found. After Williams has been reported missing, it's 2 days later, a Detroit woman was kidnapped by a man and woman who she later identifies as Coleman and Brown. She escaped while the pair was driving to Toledo by purposefully ramming her car into oncoming traffic, which, damn girl, that's smart. I'm impressed. Also, Toledo, the human trafficking capital of the Midwest.
Oh,
things they don't want you to know. It's because it's on the way to Detroit, and there's a lot of major freeways that go through there.
Ah, lovely.
Fun facts that I don't remember how I know, too.
It's all good. It's all good. We've all got those.
Yeah. So Coleman and Brown survive. They befriend Good Samaritans and then turn on them. Hello, kitty cat.
Yeah, sorry, she's gonna walk around.
That's fine. Basically, they spent a couple days with the people, get some money from gambling with them, then assault and rob them, and steal their car. So they have a system, kind of, at least.
I mean, sorta.
They make it to Detroit, and they, start their small violent crime wave. They had warrants out for the kidnapping and robbery of a 28-year-old Detroit woman who escaped from them June 28th. Remember, this starts I think it's June 18th.
Okay.
Because they're like, it really starts because he, where was it? They were hiding because he raped a girl in Chicago in early 1984. So pretty much this is all just in 1984. Not the book, just the year.
Also my birth year. Yay.
Woo woo. So yeah, on the 28th, robbery and beating of an elderly Dearborn Heights couple. June 30th, the robbery of 2 Detroit men. So that's in
men this time.
They're not, I think really they don't discriminate gender or age. It's really just
sounds like it.
Race.
Yeah.
By the time they left Detroit, the police in Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, as well as the feds, are looking for them.
And they still can't get them.
No, because they just kind of like, they blend themselves in. So they're like, yeah. So they noticed that the cars were recovered within 12 hours of every like case of them being stolen. They were like, when authorities try to locate the 1975 Buick stolen by the pair after they robbed and beat a 55-year-old woman and her friend, they suspected that they left Detroit. So where did they go? They're kind of close to Canada. They could have gone there. No, they go back to Toledo, where, yeah. And so they're fleeing to Toledo. As they do that, they discover near Wayne State University in Detroit the decomposed body of Donna Williams. And she's found July 11th. And, they pretty much determined she made it that far and that was it. And the family never will get any real closure about it because it was never tried. They went for the strongest cases, and they think Williams was killed in Michigan, which didn't have the death penalty. So, with these kind of cases, especially in the 80s, they're going for the death penalty.
Yeah. And where did they find her?
They found her at Wayne State University outside of Detroit.
Oh, okay.
So she was in an abandoned building outside a college campus.
Okay.
So on top of it, there's 3 other homicides that they tied to the pair, but they won't get tried. 77-year-old Eugene Scott of Indianapolis, Virginia Temple and her 10-year-old daughter in Toledo. They think Scott was their last murder victim because his car was found in Evanston, Illinois, where they were arrested. So they keep just zigzagging all around these states.
No kidding.
And like getting cars, murdering people, probably raping, murdering people. And so you're just, but they're only there long enough to get what they need. So they went to Toledo. They continued south. They stopped in Cincinnati to murder Marlene Waters. She was found bludgeoned to death in the basement of her home.
Great.
They stole her car and headed to Lexington, Kentucky, probably on my least favorite road, 71. And then they abandoned... Then they abandoned the car in a cornfield. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, right? Of course.
So in Williamsburg, they kidnapped Olene Carmichael and drove to Dayton, Ohio. So they're going back up. And they left Carmichael actually locked in the trunk of his car. From there, they found an elderly Dayton couple beaten and gagged in their home after Coleman and Brown stole their car. So, and on top of it, another Dayton couple reported to the police that they had been robbed by them. So basically, from Tamika Turk's murders to all the time they got to Indianapolis, because, I mean, from Dayton, you just have to cut across 70, and it's maybe an hour and a half.
Okay.
To get to Indianapolis. So it's not too far.
Wow.
No. It was less than a month. They were averaging a crime every other day.
Dang.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's something to aspire to. Just kidding.
Yes. I mean, if you're going to do this amount of murdering, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Just in total, it was a 55-day rampage, and it started with Coleman raping and murdering a 9-year-old in Kenosha, Wisconsin, to when they were arrested in Illinois. 8 homicides, 7 rapes, 3 kidnappings, 14 armed robberies.
Jeez Louise.
Mm-hmm. So how did they get caught? Because, I mean, I keep mentioning that we know about them, so obviously they got caught.
Totally. I would love to hear how they got taken down.
So, after the murders in Indianapolis of Temples and Scott, they drove back up to Waukegan area. So, Chicago from Indianapolis, because I know Chicago from Cincy is 5 hours, so it's probably about 3, 4, maybe 4. I'm going to go with 4, depending on traffic and where you're going.
Okay.
So it's, I mean, if you're going, it's not a hard trip to do. It's really up one road in the middle of Indiana. And if you want, there's lots of cornfields and one giant wind farm.
Oh, great.
Which is really creepy at night because all you see is blinking lights for miles.
I wonder if that existed in the 80s.
I know. Probably not because they're the modern windmills.
Yeah.
But the cornfields, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like they've been there a while.
Yes. I've been to Ohio. Wait, was this Ohio at this point? No, wait, where were they?
This is Indiana.
Okay.
Indiana.
I've been to Indiana and I've been to Ohio. And lots of fields. Of course.
Yeah, pretty much if you see like the middle and southern portion of Ohio is pretty much just the same as Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
It looks the same. There's like around like Lake Erie, it's a little different for a while, but once you get a point, it's all just cornfields. It's pretty flat.
Yeah.
So they had been named as a special addition to the FBI's 10 most wanted list. So I don't know if you get a prize for that, but yay.
I think your prize is prison or death row.
Your face is on TV and in post offices. Yay, that's a prize,
you're
right?
Famous. Good for you.
So Coleman's family, besides them, they really had let me redo that. Besides Coleman's family, they really didn't have any friends left after this spree because, they raped and murdered a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And, but one of their acquaintances saw the pair walking in Evanston, Illinois, which is north of Chicago, and turned them in. Because Coleman had been known to be there, authorities had been watching that area thinking they might have gone back.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they had rented an apartment there prior to fleeing to Gary, which sounds like they're fleeing to a person, but that's Gary, Indiana.
Yeah. It doesn't seem very smart to go back to the places where they're going to expect you to be.
Like the fact that they didn't go to Canada after Detroit, I'm like, literally, It's so close.
And like back then, I mean, there's still, so I'm in Canada. Once in a while, we hear stories about people coming into Canada, like on like the border where there are no border guards, where there's no like crossing.
Okay, yeah.
And it happens like once in a blue moon. And we also get refugees that go through the U.S. and sometimes will go across the border that way. In the 80s, there was even less security. So, like, it would have been easy to just, like, hop over the border. Not that Canada wants them. We don't want them.
Yeah.
Not these guys, but not these particular people that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it would have been so easy. Like, what?
I know. I was just like, wait, you went to Detroit, but it's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there.
It's right there.
I mean, granted, in Detroit, I think it's always been a very monitored traffic, like, crossing.
Yes,
just because it's
at
a
the big
narrow
cities
point,
for sure, yeah.
But still. So, the police basically pinpoint their location.
Mm-hmm.
They have undercover officers. I'm assuming they're just trying to look cool, have their coffees, like you see in all the movies. And they confirm that it's them. And they begin to basically swarm on the couple because why not? So it's shortly before noon on July 20th, 1984. Remember, this started like June 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started June. It's only been a month that it's really been intense.
Yeah.
And they were watching a pickup basketball game from the bleachers at Mason Park on the west side of Evanston as officers begin to their approach. I'm trying to think of what I would picture this as. I feel like there's Animal Kingdom kind of things where they all just slowly start circling around and corralling you into a point.
Yep.
And, they act like they couldn't care less. They're walking away from the plainclothes officers. And so Coleman's wearing a torn yellow t-shirt. He's sporting a short haircut. And it was different, like the Jerry curl he was wearing in published photos, which the most 80s thing I could ever think of is a Jerry curl.
Oh, yeah.
And, police officers come up to him and he basically told him, it's like, oh, you got the wrong guy. I'm not that guy.
Uh-huh. Nice job.
I know. He had 2 aliases, and Brown identified herself as Denise Johnson. However, she's carrying a loaded revolver. He has a long knife hidden in his boot.
Mm-hmm. Of course. I wouldn't expect anything less.
I know, right? You're like, yeah, they've been killing a lot of people.
Yeah.
Not shocked.
Yeah.
They didn't go for their weapons at all. So it's a peaceful surrender, which is crazy to think about.
That is so weird. Maybe they had gotten to this point of we're done. I know that sometimes happens, but
they're in a cooling off period. They came back because they're kind of okay, we satisfied this urge. We're kind of done for a bit.
Yeah. I just know that I've heard of people going on crime sprees like that, and sometimes even really bad ones. And then they get to a point where they're like, I just can't do this anymore. And sometimes they'll turn themselves in, or when they're found, they're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. They just don't fight. I don't know.
Yeah. So they kind of expected the crime wave to return to Evanston. Neighbors had heard for about 3 weeks that they would eventually turn up there.
Mm-hmm.
When the news comes to the area, everyone who saw him, yeah, he looked tired and really emaciated. So really skinny, sickly.
I'm sure he wasn't really taking care of himself.
No, when you're murdering and robbing people and harming people every other day, they, like you said, they just kind of ran out of steam. They just really couldn't keep it up. I mean, even Bundy didn't do that at the end. He just had one last blitz, and he was they arrested him, and he's like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
So, law enforcement is did they worry about getting caught? Did they care about it? Because, did they just want to come back and get caught at home? Because Coleman left his fingerprints everywhere. And the FBI was like, yeah, these crime scenes are, quote, so lackadaisical. I'm that's a great use of the word lackadaisical.
That's very good.
It's not used enough.
No.
That it seemed like a calling card. So because he left basically so much evidence on crime scenes, that would do him in. They were positively able to identify him at crime scenes in Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Kentucky.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize Kentucky was part of that.
Yeah, because they crossed it's 6 states. In Cincinnati, it's so easy to cross the border. I'm 20 minutes from the Kentucky border, if that.
Oh, wow.
And maybe half an hour to 45 minutes from Indiana.
Wow. Okay.
It's not hard. Yeah, it's not hard. I can cross state lines very easily.
Mm-hmm.
So they were able to confirm that, yes, these are Coleman and Brown. But don't worry, we still have to deal with all the court issues. Because, he's a charmer.
I was going to say, this is going to come full circle.
So, again, because there's 6 states involved plus federal stuff, who's going to deal with all the crimes? Who's going to prosecute? Because, this is going to make someone's career.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, they're like, okay, who has the harshest laws? Because they're like, we don't want them getting out. So you get first shot. So because Michigan and Wisconsin have no death penalty, they're out. They'll be tried last, if at all. So Lake County DA said that they wanted him first. So that's Illinois. So as Brown and Coleman are separated by police, they're both advised of their rights. Debra immediately invokes her right to remain silent and asks to speak to an attorney, which is, I mean, fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
That's what you should
smart
do.
Option.
That's what you should do. Kids, if you ever get arrested,
yeah,
get your one phone call and talk to a lawyer before you talk to the police.
Yeah.
I've watched enough crime shows.
I know. It looks suspicious, but if you're like, I would like to use my right to remain silent and get a lawyer, I just want to make sure everything is clear.
Oh, no, totally. I think that, like, if I were ever to be arrested, I would definitely do that right away. Like, I don't think that necessarily makes you look guilty. It's just like, that's your right. You know? I don't know.
And it makes you look smart.
Yes.
Because how many people get in trouble because they want to help, and then they're talking, and then they end up in court.
Yeah. Yep.
So, she's an FBI agent. It's like giving them Miranda rights, asking her questions about her identity, talking to Brown also about why is he doing this? Like, they're trying to figure out basically the motive behind these attacks, and no one really could get it out of it. More than 50 law enforcement officials from all the states met to strategize, which
wow.
I'm trying to pick. I'm assuming, the big circle table from Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
I'm just picturing that.
Uh-huh.
Like, so that way everyone's equal.
Yep.
So eventually Ohio is given the first shot at the spree killers because, we're quick and we have the death penalty.
Awesome.
Sounds so bad.
Canada doesn't have the death penalty at all.
Yeah. I mean, I think currently we just don't have the drugs, so if you're on death row.
Oh, I actually heard about that. Like, I heard that there were some states that were low on their, supply. And then I also heard that some states, they had a formulation that actually was doing harm to the people as they died, and they could, feel the pain. And I was like, yeah.
It's one of the drugs a bunch of countries have refused to sell it to the U.S.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yeah, that's what I heard, yeah.
So, if they still do it, they're going to feel pain.
Yeah.
And you can't get a doctor to do it because it's against the Hippocratic Oath.
Totally.
So, this was determined by the U.S. Attorney Dan K. Webb. So, Ohio gets the pair on aggravated murder charges in May 1985 for the murder of Tani Story, and in June 1985 for the murder of Marlene Walters, on top of, the other violent, the handful of violent crimes they committed, robbery, assault, sexual assault, so many. So they're both sentenced to be executed, and then that appeals process kicks in.
Of course.
I'm fine with it. If you're going to try to kill someone, they should have a right to their appeal.
Well, yeah, everybody, no matter what, should have a right to appeal, in my opinion.
Yeah. Coleman's case actually goes all the way up to the Supreme Court several times between 85 and 2002.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't really work. He was basically like, this is unconstitutional. They're like, nah. By April 2002, Coleman's chances ran out. And on April 25th, 2002, the Ohio Supreme Court rejected his claim by his attorneys that the state's plan to basically have a bunch of the victims and survivors who wanted to view the execution would turn it into a, quote, spectator sport. I'm sorry. I feel like if you're a victim or a survivor and you want to watch that person die, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying you have that right.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to talk about because I'm not actually really a proponent of the death penalty. But I also kind of feel like, yeah, I feel like if it's something that you want to watch and you can, why not let them?
Yeah, I'm not saying the death penalty is right, but I'm saying, he's the one who created all these survivors and victims.
Oh, yeah. And
so,
yeah, it could bring you a good sense of closure too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they had to set up a closed circuit viewing outside the death house.
Oh.
Because there were so many people that showed up.
Oh my God.
And I believe Ohio's might be south of Columbus where they do it. We have a big prison.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's in the middle of bumblefuck nowhere, which is between Cincinnati and Ohio University.
Okay.
So everyone was talking about his final meal, and I was like, I'm going to include it then. Mm-hmm. So
these are always interesting.
I know. A well-done filet mignon, which, how dare you? How dare you get that good of a steak well done?
But yeah, no kidding.
Smothered in onion, which I was just like, okay, why are you eating steak then?
Yeah.
Granted, onions are delicious, but...
I do love onions.
Some fried chicken breasts.
Okay.
A salad with French dressing, which is just sadder ranch dressing.
Okay, yeah.
A sweet potato pie topped with whipped cream.
I do like sweet potato pie.
French fries.
I do like greens. Those too, and those.
Yeah, onion rings.
And those.
Cornbread.
And that.
Broccoli with melted cheese. Biscuit and gravy. I'm talking about American, like, Southern biscuits and gravy.
Oh, yeah. I am part Texan, and I can tell you that you cannot get good biscuits and gravy unless you go to the South. I mean, I guess maybe there are some places, but like in Canada, no, you got to go down to the South.
You need someone who grew up in the South and learned the right way.
Yes.
On top of it, the most American thing, after having all this food, that's so much food. He washes it down with a cherry Coke.
Oh my God. I actually heard that in a lot of states, the states that have the death penalty, they actually started to make restrictions on last meals because people were ordering inordinate amounts of food. Mm-hmm. And they were like, we can't budget this.
Yeah, I think now they give you like so much money and they're like, whatever, like, and then they have a standard one if you don't want it.
Okay.
So on April 26, 2002, while reciting "The Lord is My Shepherd," Alton Coleman died by lethal injection in Lucasville, Ohio. So that's the big prison.
Okay.
It is just north of Portsmouth, Ohio, right on the border, and then south of Chillicothe, which is true crime people will know Chillicothe because there's like a question whether or not there was a serial killer there. There's like, I believe 5 or 6 women that had died mysteriously in a period of time. In case people are wondering, from Cincinnati, it is 2 hours and 2 minutes.
Great.
Lucasville.
Great.
So it's pretty close. I mean, in Ohio, 2 hours gets you a lot of places. In the Midwest.
Ohio's not very big.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So
that was him.
That was Coleman.
Yeah.
And then we also have Reginald Wilkinson, who is the director of the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, who pretty much was like, yeah, Coleman never showed any remorse for the spree and killings and the rapes.
Cool.
However, Brown's death sentence gets commuted to life in prison in 91 because then Governor Richard Solis said that she was mentally disabled.
Okay.
So she's currently at the Dayton Correctional Institution, and she technically is one of the dozen people on Indiana's death row until like pretty recently.
Huh.
But there is no option for parole. So that's good.
Yeah, that is good.
And that is Alton Coleman and Debra Brown.
Awesome. Sound like tip-top people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was dark.
That's pretty dark. I love how you're like, I have the darkest topic ever, and I have like the lightest topic ever.
I know, we switched. So do you want to tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah. So basically, Not Another XF Pod on all the things is where my podcast, my X-Files podcast is with my lovely co-host Carolyn. Not Another XF Pod. Just Google it. You'll find us.
So next week, you'll be back with a cheerful historical topic?
Yes, I will. A little more cheerful than this.
What are you talking about? This? Yeah, no, this is, I can't even fake that that's cheerful.
I don't do a lot of true crime podcast listening, mostly because I had a pretty bad experience listening to a true crime podcast that kind of like sent me on a not so good thing for a while. Like it kind of scarred me, honestly. And so I don't listen to it a lot. But I am still like super fascinated by like why people do these kinds of things. And it kind of sounds like these people probably had mental health issues that were not resolved.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they fed on each other. It seems like they fed on each other.
Yeah.
Like it's a cycle because they didn't really go on the murder spree until they were together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure there was something between them that was exacerbating that somehow.
Like what is it? A folie à deux?
Oh, yeah. There's an X-Files episode called that, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, exactly. It's like it's like that idea that somebody can kind of like mentally influence you when you're with them, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty tragic.
Okay, so listeners, we'll be back next week with something a little more cheerful.
A little bit.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Hi, it's Carolyn.
And Vanessa.
From Not Another X-Files podcast.
We're the female-led X-Files podcast you didn't even know you were looking for.
We've got plenty of opportunities for nostalgia, conspiracies, forbidden romance, and plenty of laughs.
It's true. Come on over to our place in Vancouver, Canada, and revisit your favorite 90s sci-fi TV show.
You'll be glad you stopped by. You can find us on all your favorite podcast spots.
And on the web at notanotherxfpod.libsyn.com.
Bye.
Bye. Music for this promo by Purple Planet.
Hello, friends. We are the Ladies of Strange. I'm Ashley.
I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Rebecca.
Have you ever wondered if Jenny's head really did fall off when they removed the green ribbon?
Or if aliens are hiding in the tails of comets waiting to take us away?
Or if there's any scientific basis to the Ouija board?
Well, then don't risk your search history and join us each Thursday as we discuss
the history, mystery, and theory
of all things questionable, odd, and eerie.
New episodes are released every Thursday. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. More information about the show, including show notes and links to our social media, can be found on our website, theladiesofstrange.com.
Keep it strange, lovelies.
Of Domesticity. We're available on all podcatchers. Remember to rate, review, subscribe to help spread the word, or just force other people to listen to it. Our Facebook and Twitter are at Domestic Podcast, and our Instagram is at the Cult of Domesticity. We also have podcast merch at Threadless. As well, if you want to support us financially or show some appreciation, we have a PayPal tip jar and a Patreon, which has some pretty great perks. Any topic suggestions, feel free to email us at domesticpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to stay domestic and cult-free.